I think it was Goethe who said there are two lasting things that we can leave our children, basically. One is roots, the other wings,
Mm,
the two gifts that we can give our children. And so
I love
that's
that.
where I'm coming from with the legacy part. In fact, I even embroidered that on a little something, framed it to
Yeah.
keep visible when my children were growing up, and to keep reminding me of that, because I thought that it's just so important. They need to know where they came from.
Welcome to Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast, the show where we ask the big question: what will they say about you when you're gone? Each week, we sit down with icons, trailblazers, and legends in the making to dive into their stories, scandals, and the legacies they're leaving behind. And now, here's your host, the video godfather himself, Lou Bortone.
Hey, it's Lou Bortone, and we're back with the Legacy Podcast. My guest today is Vicki Peele. Hi, Vicki.
Hey, Lou, how are you?
Good. Thank you so much for doing this. I know you talk a lot about legacy, so I was eager to get you on and just talk about a bunch of different stuff. But before
Okay.
we start, tell us about her life hacks, the stuff that you do, and things like that.
Okay. Her Life Hacks is where I started with my website. And I have narrowed down things a lot since then. And the older I get, the more it really focuses on legacy. And the things that I'm focusing on really are four pillars that I call COPE.
COPE, COPE.
Clear, clutter, organize, preserve, and empower. And
Mm,
I've just added empower because I did have cop. Cop out didn't sound so good. And Chat GPT helped me come up with a good E word. So,
great.
and basically what that means is the real focus, though, is on preserving, not the clutter and the organizing. That's the lens through which I see everything. In other words, I do consider legacy decluttering,
Yeah.
that you clear away things that that your family doesn't want, that you don't
Mhm.
want or need, that are not valuable to you, and also to make your life a little simpler in
Mhm.
later years, is to get rid of some of the stuff. And then with what's left, you organize it so you can find what you have left. That's pretty important, I found. And then empower is the way I want my audience to feel, so
Right.
that they feel in control in
Mhm.
managing their life in later years. And then they feel a sense of accomplishment of having done that. I've just
Right.
seen too many people, including family members, who in their later years have just basically sat there like
Mhm.
life had gone,
Yeah.
basically, and they had no interest anymore. It
Mhm.
is sad. And of course, I may get that way too, but I hope I'll have some things in order by then.
Yeah. No, you're doing a great job with that. I love her life hacks and COPE. The COPE is a really cool acronym. And I know you used to talk a lot and still do about decluttering in terms of legacy. And it's so funny because my wife and I go back and forth with this storage unit, which is the bane of my
Oh,
existence. It's
wow.
like 25 years of stuff in a storage unit. And I kid my daughter, hey, someday all this will be yours. But there's nothing in there that we use really. Well, sometimes we have
And
the stuff is in there. We bring that out every year. But I look at things and I say, if I haven't used it in a year, I'm probably never going to use it again.
I say that too, but that doesn't mean I get rid of it. But
Yeah.
we're in the same position. I'm a certified organizational specialist,
Oh,
but I
wow.
can't tell you how much stuff we have in barns
Mhm.
and storage units.
Yeah.
And part of that comes from two estates that we had to close, and at the time didn't know what to do with. And see,
Hmm.
they didn't make any preparation about what to do with their stuff. So it
Right.
was left to us. And that's something that I would like to ease that burden a little bit for my children, is to take
Hmm.
care of some of that ahead of time, so they don't have to make all those decisions at a time when they really don't feel like making those kinds of decisions. And they feel, this was mama's, I need to keep this. You don't need to keep everything. The memories are the most important things. It's not the things, the memories.
Yeah. And that's what I want to talk to you about because there's stuff
Yeah.
and then there's memories and things like there's certain things like for my dad, the only thing that I wanted when he passed away was his Emmy because I know he works
Mhm.
hard and I have that and I
That's
keep it
awesome.
out. And one of those things where I say, oh my gosh, if there's an earthquake or something, I'm grabbing this and running.
Yeah, exactly.
But I know it's less about stuff and more about those memories. So how do
Yeah.
we make that distinction? The other day I found a folder that my dad had left, and it has my grandfather's passport from Italy to America in it. And
Wow.
that kind of stuff is really, I don't want to
Yeah.
get rid of it. I do want to pass that along, but storage unit full of stuff, not so much.
Yeah. I know it's hard to make those decisions, but I think it was Goethe who said there are two lasting things that we can leave our children, basically. One is roots, the other wings, the two gifts that we can give our children. And so
I love
that's
that.
where I'm coming from with the legacy part. In fact, I even embroidered that on a little something, framed it to
Yeah.
keep visible when my children were growing up. And to keep reminding me of that, because I thought that it's just so important. They need to know where they came from. And then once they do, you have to let them go, have to
Right.
make their own way and just make their own decisions. When my children grew up and my daughter started having children, then I gave it to her. And I've noticed she's kept it visible too. And I can see the evidence of that in my grandchildren and the kind of people that they're becoming. It's very rewarding to see that kind of thing.
That's
But
great.
see, it's really just not about what you have, your money or possessions or any of that. It's about who you are and about the memories that you can pass on and help your family understand where they came from, who they were. I'm still learning about some of my ancestors. I don't know all that much about them. But I can tell them stories about my grandparents that I
Right.
think are important for them to learn about. No.
So when you talk about like in the COPE, the empowerment, the E, can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yes, I think I just want women, especially, because that's the ones
Mhm.
mostly that I work with, to
Yep.
to know that they can make decisions about their own life and that guide what they're going to do. They can dream big, and then they
Mhm.
can have goals and then act on them. And
Yep.
I could see evidence that my granddaughters are growing into those kind of women, and
Mhm.
it's very rewarding to see that kind of thing. They make their
Yep.
own decisions. They're their
Mhm.
own people, but yet they're kind and compassionate people. And that's the kind of thing you want to see. That's where your legacy lies.
So that's awesome. Yep. That makes a lot of sense. I also wanted to ask you a little bit about, you talk about saving stories as part of a legacy, which is great because I know I look back now as I'm trying to trace my roots back to Italy, and I found some of my grandfather's stuff. And I'm looking for where he grew up because I want to go there this
Right.
summer in a small town near Naples.
Well, that would be
And it's
awesome.
hard to find his address, but I realize now, like my grandmother had 13 children. My dad was one of the youngest, but now my last uncle just passed away, and I realized I have no way to find that. My mom or father probably would have known what town he was from, but I have no way to find from family members about that
Right.
because that entire generation has passed on. What do you think in terms of trying to collect those memories and those
That is important. And I think a
stories?
lot of times you don't realize till it's too late. Oh, I wish I had asked my
Mhm.
aunt about this, or I wish
Yeah.
I'd asked my grandmother about this, or that kind of thing. I do have a couple of things that I remember asking my grandmother because she was a great cook. Of course, she cooked 3 meals a day. We had
Wow.
string beans and potatoes and biscuits every day of my life.
Wow.
And but I asked her for her recipe for Brunswick stew and for honey jelly roll. So I've got those two from what she told me and then tweaked
Right.
them. But in terms of other stories, and one of the things that is I'm creating a legacy line of products. And one of them, my favorite, of course, right now is My Life, My Legacy. And I've
Oh, yeah.
put this in a booklet. I've had it
Mhm.
published and I have 3 editions. This is one of them. And
Mhm.
then this one, Roses and Lilies. And
Oh, nice.
that's I named that after my grandmother because her name was Rose Lily,
Oh,
actually.
wow. Yeah.
And
That's
then
great.
this one, so they're different. But it's a collection of prompts about different areas of your life so that you
Mhm.
can think through your life and get down some of those memories. And actually, my husband and I have started a YouTube series of us going through the book and telling our stories that I'm recording. And then, of course, I'm going to use some of our script. I'm going to go back and separate them into transcripts and then put
Mhm.
them into the book and then publish it for our grandchildren and our children and grandchildren.
Oh, that's perfect. That's
So,
great. So
but
where can folks find that? Is that public on YouTube or is that really just for your
actually,
for your
it'll be on. I just realized I hadn't got all my products on my website yet. I put out links to them sometimes, but I forget to put them where people can actually find them. But it's on my website in my shop, herlifehacks.com. It'll be on my shop. And I did have these published, but the way I give it out is in a digital format, and you could have it
Mhm.
published.
That's
But
perfect.
it's a good idea too to just start jotting down stories when you think of them, because I forget things so
Yep.
quickly. I meant to do that. If I don't write it down, I say, I meant to do, what was it I meant to do? I don't know. And especially like going through old photos. And that's something that I'm going to be working on and developing a process for people,
Yep.
a course for people to do that, just going through photos. And when you go through them, they may trigger memories. When you
Yeah.
look at a photo, besides identifying who's in it and everything and about the time frame, if there's a story that you remember about, jot
Yeah.
that down.
I know.
In
It's
fact,
interesting.
as I told you earlier, I'd like for us to tell a few stories about things that we remember. Do you have a special story that you remember growing up?
Yeah. I guess it's not that funny, but I remember growing up, my grandparents, my Italian grandparents, again, they had 13 kids. So we had a ton of aunts and uncles and cousins. And every Sunday we'd go to my grandmother's house and have a big meal that seemed to last for hours. And I remember, for some reason, I don't know why I remember this, but I remember sitting under the kitchen table while my grandmother was cooking, and my grandfather was sneaking me little Dixie cups of wine because he made wine. And so it's amazing I'm not an alcoholic because I was 7 years old. But I just remember really vividly that the kitchen and the smells and the sounds. And it's so interesting that I can remember that. And I can't remember what I did 20 minutes ago, but I can remember something from 50 years
And
ago.
food is a really important thing among a lot of families. And I know it wasn't, I was raised in a Southern community. One of the things, let me see, I was going to tell a story, but
Yeah.
when we had pizza one day for supper, we never had pizza because
Mhm.
there were no pizza parlors. That's not the way grandmama cooked.
Yeah.
Never, I don't know why or how we got a pizza. But anyway, there was one piece left on the table, and my granddaddy came by and he ate it. And he told my mother, he said, Hazel, that's my mother's name, of course. I don't complain much about food, but that's the worst pie I've ever eaten. So the shape of the fucking pie, I thought he was
Yeah.
eating pie. He
That's
never, he
funny.
didn't know what a pizza was.
That's hilarious. Where did you grow up? And your parents?
In Eastern North Carolina, and actually I live now probably about 5 miles from where I was raised.
Oh, that's cool.
And my
Yep.
husband was also from this area. And in fact, I told him, I said, the reason we got married was because we were probably the only people in the community that weren't kin. But actually, you can probably trace that back too.
Yeah, that's
But
awesome. Have you ever done any of the Ancestry.com and that kind of thing?
my husband's working on that some, and he was telling me about some things that he found out. Like, for instance, he found out that my great grandfather owned a baseball team, professional baseball team. Yeah.
That's
It was not like one of the big professional, but it was called professional around here. I thought that was interesting. I know my daddy liked to play baseball, but I've had no idea about that. And he
Yeah.
also found out that his great granddaddy rather, was actually
Mhm.
kicked out of a church,
Mhm.
Primitive Baptist church, which
Yeah.
that my grandmother I know came up that way, and a lot of older people in the community did. That's not, you don't see too many people who are still members of them. They're mostly historical churches now, but they got to arguing over the concept of predestination. And he obviously disagreed with what the rest of them thought. So they
Yeah.
kicked him out.
Too funny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then did you have folks who came at some point from Europe or
And
how far back?
I'm not sure about that either. My husband is going to he's into the local historical society things. And so he's
Right.
doing a lot more of the genealogy piece
Yeah.
of it. And so he was going to see if he could trace mine back. But he was told that, for instance, the Daughters of the American Revolution, that there's a group
Mhm.
of those around here, that ancestors probably came over during that time because people that lived on the road where I was born were typically from that time period. I thought that was interesting. He's going to go back on there and look it up for me.
Yeah. The other thing that's interesting about the internet now is all of that information is out there because last week I went down a rabbit hole and I was looking at records from my grandmother's hometown in Italy. And it's amazing all that you can just go down the rabbit hole and
Yeah.
I was finding like, okay, I'm looking for, she was born in 1898. I'm trying to find her address so I can go to her old home. I know that she came here when she was 15 years old, married when she was 17. So it's just like that history
Okay.
piece. It's just fascinating.
I know. And he is okay. I've let him have a room upstairs that he calls his office. So
Yeah.
he goes up there and he is researching all the time on history. He's put on some history Facebook pages for the Historical Society, and he's done a lot. But he's really been researching into our families a lot lately. So I'm looking
Mhm.
forward to including some of that stuff into what we've been talking about in terms of the legacy stories.
Yep. Legacy stories. So tell me a little bit
Mhm.
more about that. And I know before we started, you showed me a photo
Oh,
of
yeah.
the home.
I did want to. This is the
Wow.
home where I was raised.
Oh my
And
God.
that's my granddaddy out front when I think
Yeah.
he was about 75 at the time. And
Wow.
you can see at the bottom, I have,
Rose and Cater. Yeah.
yeah, Rose and Cater Lily Home Place, Martin County, NC, circa 1900. So I figured that was about the time the house was built. And it's
Yep.
been torn down since, but my daddy and I saved the boards and the frame. My husband and I made the frame out of the boards from
That's
the
cool.
house
Wow.
itself.
So
So it
those
was
board, the frame is from the boards from the
from the,
house.
and I fixed one for all of my sisters.
That's
But
great.
it was a huge house, and it was nice in the summer, but it was cold in the winter. There was, of course, no such thing as insulation. And
Oh,
we just
wow.
had heaters in certain rooms of the house. So you
Mhm.
run from one room to the other and shut the door to
Yeah.
stay warm. And there were like 8 bedrooms in it.
Yeah.
And we lived with my paternal grandparents. And they lived on one side of the house and we
Mhm.
lived on the other side. And I had a bedroom upstairs. And the heater was downstairs in my parents. So they cut a hole in the floor and put in a vent to let warm air come up. But it wasn't really that warm. You'd heat up a quilt over on the heater and ball it up
Yeah.
and run upstairs and then wrap it around your feet. That's
Oh
how
my
you
gosh.
would stay warm.
Yeah.
But that porch you saw, it was a wraparound porch just about all the way around. But on the corner, if there was ever a
Wow.
breeze in the summertime, that's where it was. And about every Saturday night, we would sit out
Mhm.
on the porch and we would have supper out there. We'd have
Yeah.
like banana sandwiches, pimento cheese sandwiches, lemonade, and they would tell stories. My daddy and
Wow.
granddaddy would tell old stories. Now, they told the same stories over and over, but we still
Mhm.
laughed every time they told them
Yeah.
because so that's the way I learned a lot of things about the past. Like, for instance, my granddaddy told a story about his sister, Aunt Gladys. They had cattle in the field behind the house. This one cow kept lowing and would not stop, just on and on. And Aunt Gladys got tired of it. So she went out there and wired the mouth shut of the cow.
Oh my.
Stood some haywire and wired it. That's some of the ancestors I have.
That's so
So
funny. And so I know, and legacy, like the way I look at it, a lot of it is looking back, but it's also looking forward.
exactly.
With the products that you have, what, like those booklets, what kind of things or what kind of prompts are in those for people to capture
Oh,
those memories?
there's let's see. Some of the areas that it covers are, I'm going to have to look at it myself.
Yeah. And I can put links below later on with
Okay.
that lead back to your
To
site.
look at a personal portrait, just things about yourself, childhood, what your family life was about, your
Yeah.
education, your work experience, love and marriage,
Mhm.
adulthood and parenthood, life events that were important in your life, celebrations. How do you celebrate things? Holidays and things, different
Like
people will have
traditions.
a lot of different celebrations. Inspiration. What are some things that inspire you? And what are some of your favorites? My favorite food, what are some things that
Mhm.
are your favorites? And then there's a spot for journaling too. And I think that's an important part of it.
Yeah, that's really cool. So in terms of personally, like when you think about legacy, how do you hope to be remembered?
For things that I've done, because they're not going to be beyond who knows me now, but
Yeah.
for the ones from my children and grandchildren, for how they
Mhm.
become. In fact, the biggest gift I think for my legacy is to see that my children turned out better than we did. That then maybe we've done something right, And then for my grandchildren to even turn out even better than they did. So they did something right. If that continues, then that's the greatest gift I think I could have
That's great.
for me and for them.
And that's like the American dream of you always want the next generation to do better
To
than
be better.
previous.
And I don't necessarily mean to be more successful money-wise, but to just be good people. And
Yep.
I've seen that in I have one grandson, I have 3 granddaughters, but one grandson. And of course, they played sports all their life, started when they were like 4 years old. And he played soccer and baseball. But this is the kind of kid he was. When he played baseball, he was too little to play to be a pitcher or anything like that. He played second base, but he was really good. And he was never warmed up as a pitcher in the games. I mean, he was like 8 to 10 Longhorn, somewhere in there. But when the other pitchers that did warm up they kept hitting everybody or throwing wild or whatever. They'd bring in Seth. And he was just smart. He would throw balls in the dirt for the kids that he knew were going to hit it out. And they wanted to hit it so bad, they would swing at everything. And then the kids he knew wouldn't hit it, he'd throw it right down the middle.
Yeah.
But they did that in a championship game one time. All the pitchers had gone out, and they were way ahead of us. They had the biggest pitcher in the league. We weren't even supposed to be in the championship game. And Seth was pitching. And one of the first ones that come up was that big pitcher. And he knocks it out of the park. But Seth goes over in the baseline now and gives him a high five because he earned it. That's the way he sees things, that he earned. Another time he was playing soccer and a boy came and stole the ball from him and went on to score. And my husband said, Seth, that boy stole that ball from you, didn't he? He said, yeah, he was better than I thought he was. But he gave him the credit and then he would adjust. Those are the kinds of things that really make you proud.
Right. Yeah. So you don't necessarily remember the hits or his batting average. It's really more about how you play and how you.
But they were good. They were still very good.
I know. I spent many weekends watching my son because he played baseball, and at one time he was on like 3 different teams: a travel team and a showcase team, and all through high school and junior high school. And oh my gosh, it was just. But now I think it's like that. In some ways, I think they're taking the joy out of it because they are, on so many teams, and it's really competitive. But I think he really enjoyed that. And I think that one of the reasons my kids stayed out of trouble is because we kept them so busy with sports that they didn't have time to do anything else.
Yeah, we spent probably every weekend from March on to the fall, even earlier than that, at softball games. For my granddaughter played on a travel team too. She was the catcher, and she would catch as many as 5 games a day.
Wow.
And I don't know how she did it. Of course, we were there for everything. I even left the hospital one time after arthroscopic knee surgery and went straight to a volleyball game.
Yeah, that's great. I had twins, so sometimes in high school, my son would be playing on one field and my daughter would play on the other, and I'd have to run back and forth to see, okay, I'll do 2 innings here and 2.
We've done that too.
And it sounds like family is just obviously a huge part of your legacy, which is really nice. Any other thoughts about legacy? Because I think, again, people are so consumed with making money and having stuff. And now at this point in my life, I'm thinking about, I don't really care about the stuff. I just want to make more memories. So I want to go to Italy with my family.
Exactly. But I've had a lot of people are thinking more along those lines now. We live in some pretty troubled times. When things like that happen, people tend to turn inward a little bit, and they need that reassurance of that connection of family. So I think it's really more important than ever for people to stop and think about it. And it shouldn't be, I know, and I'm talking about it from the perspective of a 75-year-old, which I am, but you really should be thinking about it a lot earlier because your legacy is what happens to you every day of your life. You're living that every day of your life. It's funny. When I was growing up, you just respected your elders. That was a given. And there was so many people, I thought, oh, they're just so wonderful. And then later on, as I got older, I found out a lot of things about those people that were not that great. And I thought, wow, that burst my bubble. But and I guess when you get my age, you don't feel like raising hell or anything like that. So maybe that's why they seem so good what they've got later on in life.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, yeah. And I'm like, my whole thing now at my age is I just want to get a little bit better every day and not regress.
Yeah.
But that's fantastic. I love the stuff that you do. Can you tell folks where they can find your legacy journals and other products and things you're doing around
Yes,
it?
herlifehacks.com. I'm also on YouTube. I've just done 2 case studies about legacy decluttering. One
Oh,
was an
cool.
interview. I interviewed a 90-year-old woman who basically did her own legacy decluttering. That was not a term that she was aware of or knew anything about, but when she told me what she was doing, I said, that's exactly what she did. She had been in her home for about 60 years. She
Wow.
she was turning 90, and she decided she needed to be closer to her children.
Yeah.
We're about 100 miles away. So she has set up selling her house, getting rid of her stuff, deciding who got what in terms of her belongings, whatever
Yeah.
they wanted, and then get rid of the rest of the stuff. And now she's moved into a tiny apartment, so she couldn't take all of that.
Yeah.
And she did all that herself. And I thought it was just an amazing story of empowerment, her
Yeah.
doing all of that. And then
Right.
I've got another case study that I did with a woman who is doing legacy decluttering from estates. In other words, after the fact, she's left with all of this stuff to make decisions about what to do. So I've
Yeah.
got a case study about that, and I'm getting ready to post that on YouTube as well.
That's awesome. Yeah. And I think
And
that the legacy decluttering is, I think it's of it as sort of a gift to your children and grandchildren because you're not
it
saddled with
is
them with all that responsibility and
exactly.
all that stuff. Yeah.
But I've also got things like, I call it a VLP box, vital
The
legal papers. And actually, I named that after myself because my name is Vicki Lily Peele, VLP.
Yeah.
And pulling together things that are important, like healthcare documents, financial things, insurance, and all digital stuff. We need to be prepared to pass on our digital information, where it is and how can you access it. And if our children don't know where all that is, how are they
Right.
going to take care of that? So that's pulling that together. And I have this free Her Heritage homework. Now, notice homework is in all caps. Homework
Yep.
for and that's a 7-page getting started checklist of things that you can do in each one of those areas, like clearing clutter and coping, organizing, preserving, empowering. What are some things that you can do in each one of those areas to get you started thinking about legacy decluttering?
One of the things I like to ask guests before we sign off is if there's the Vicki Peele story, the movie on Netflix or wherever, who would you like to play you in the movie?
One person comes to mind, and she's dead, but that doesn't matter anyway. But Angela Lansbury. And I say that because I've watched the entire series of Murder, She Wrote, probably at
Okay.
least twice, and I hate to admit that. But here's the thing. There's just something empowering about seeing an older woman with class that's
Yeah.
smarter than everybody of the town, but still
Mhm.
humble about it.
Yeah.
So,
That's awesome.
so that's why I
Um,
like her.
yeah, that's great. And it's nice too, because I know there are some TV series now where the female is the lead character. They're older and it's the same kind of thing, whether it's the new Matlock series, I think it's Kathy Bates. And so that's encouraging. And then the other goofy question I like to ask is sometimes when people walk on stage, they have a walk-on song. Do you have a walk-off or a finale song?
Okay. I don't listen to a lot of music. I listen to books. And when I'm working music, it's distracting. And if I do like Southern gospel, and actually most of all of them are walk-off songs, if you stop and think about it. But outside of that, I would say probably I Can See Clearly Now,
Oh,
Johnny
yeah.
Nash,
Yeah.
and or Both Sides Now, Joni Mitchell.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So
Perfect.
I
Yeah.
like those
Johnny's
too.
awesome. That's great. I know I'm trying to work on a whole funeral playlist for my wife because she's going to outlive me because all her side of the family lives to be 100 years old.
But it sounds like yours is going to be pretty a happy celebration funeral from some
I
of your
hope so.
songs that I've heard you talking about.
I appreciate it. I'll put all the links to your sites and
Okay.
your freebie below. And I'm
Okay.
so happy that you're able to join us. Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Oh Shit, I'm Dead, the Legacy Podcast. Please subscribe and tell your friends about the podcast, and do it now while you're still alive and kicking. Check out other episodes at ohshitimdead.com.